Lights, camera, action.
Hey everyone.
Hello.
Welcome back to Married to Movies. I'm Emily.
And I'm Jon.
The only reason I say that is because I've been listening to some podcasts recently and I'm realizing we never introduce ourselves on here.
We really don't. I kind of introduce you. I'll say your name.
Oh, well,
I usually don't say my name.
Maybe I don't realize it, but
yeah, you're right.
Yeah, I just figure, this could be somebody's first time listening and I want them to know who we are. So,
well, welcome.
Yes,
if you're
welcome.
new, welcome. I'm Jon.
I'm Emily. Anyways, so today we are going to be talking about Pirates of the Caribbean 3 at World's End.
Walk
and
the plank. That's from SpongeBob.
Yes, it is. Not from this movie. Not from any movie, actually.
But it's when they're in the box pretending to use imagination and that they're on Pirates Island. Walk the plank.
So we have done the first two Pirates movies in previous seasons. So if you have not listened to those yet, make sure to do that. I believe we did the first one in season 1 and the second one in season 2, right?
Yes, we did, because it was season 1 and season 2, and this is season 3. This is Pirates of the Caribbean 3.
Yes.
And this is actually our first trilogy that we're completing on the podcast as a whole.
Yes. But it's not actually a trilogy, right? Because there's 5 movies.
Well, that is true. It was originally intended to be a trilogy, or at least it was planned, and then, it's a whole thing. But yes, this is our first trilogy that we've completed.
Awesome. All right. Well, I'm just going to go ahead and dive into our introductory details.
I see what you did there. Pirates of the Caribbean, water, dive.
It's a little bit of a stretch. That was not intentional. So I'll go ahead and start us off. Pirates of the Caribbean 3 at World's End was released on May 25th of 2007. It was directed by Gore Verbinski, and I have quite a hefty cast list. I probably could have included more, but there's just so many people. So here are the main ones that I wrote down. It is starring Johnny Depp, Keira Knightley, Orlando Bloom, Jeffrey Rush, Bill Nye, Naomi Harris, Keith Richards, Tom Hollander, Stellan Skarsgård, and Jack Davenport.
Isn't it so weird to think, calling back to one of our first episodes, the first Pirates of the Caribbean film. Actually, that was our second episode. So, anyways, isn't it weird to think that Jack Sparrow was almost Christopher Walken?
Yes. I still can't wrap my head around it.
I know. It's so weird. I mean, I'm so thankful for what we got and how it all worked out, because Jack Sparrow is an iconic character, but that just popped into my brain. Can you imagine this movie with Christopher Walken as Jack Sparrow? Especially when he's in Davy Jones' locker, how unhinged that would have been.
Yeah, I can't even imagine.
That's my peanut.
So this movie was distributed by Walt Disney Pictures. It has a runtime of 2 hours and 48 minutes. It's rated PG-13, and it had a budget of $300 million, and the box office total was $963.4 million. Nice. So they had
Wait. They didn't break $1 billion?
Mm-mm.
I thought this film broke $1 billion.
I mean, I can double check, but
I don't know why I was thinking that.
I saw 963.
That's crazy. I mean, no, I believe you. You don't have to look it back up, but I don't know why I had it in my mind that it crossed $1 billion.
Yep, no, it was close, but 963. I just looked it up.
Interesting.
But that kind of leads me straight into my fun facts. So I'll just start on those because as I was researching, I found that upon this movie's release, it was the most expensive movie made to date.
Yes, I did know that. And maybe that was factoring into why I thought it crossed $1 billion, but regardless.
Yeah, so it was the most expensive. Obviously, it has been surpassed since then because this was 2007 that it was made. But it is still currently the 12th most expensive movie ever made. So it's held its own on that, list.
Yeah. I mean, that's pretty close to top 10. And that was, close to 20 years ago, which is wild because I remember watching this in the movie theater when it came out.
Yeah.
What I'm going to go ahead. Do you have like a list there of the most expensive movies? Oh, okay, never mind. You don't have to pull one up. I just thought since you had said it was number 12.
No, I like that idea though. But as I'm pulling this up, just to kind of put in perspective, this movie's budget was more than all of the Lord of the Rings movies combined. All
What?
3 of them. Yes.
Really?
Isn't that crazy?
I never ever would have guessed that.
Yeah.
I mean, to
yeah.
be fair, Lord of the Rings has a lot of special effects, but not like it's different.
Yeah.
Anyways.
So I do have my list. I'm gonna go the top 12, so that way I'm including pirates.
Okay, before you say them, I'm gonna guess that there's at least 4 Marvel movies on the list. I'm gonna guess that Avatar is on there as well. Beyond that, I'm not gonna keep going, but those are some of my guesses anyways.
So I'm gonna start with number 1. Number 1 is Star Wars: The Force Awakens.
I almost said a Star Wars movie too.
And its budget was $447 million.
Ooh, I was gonna guess 500.
Second is Jurassic World: Fallen Kingdom.
Really? Mm-hmm. Wow.
Third is Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker.
Boo.
Number 4 is Fast X.
Yeah, for Fast 10. Which
Fast 10.
Like, double
I don't know
boo.
that. I don't know that movie.
Any of the Fast and Furious movies should not be on this list.
Now, actually, one of the other Pirates movies has taken the 5th most expensive movie spot. Do you have a guess of which one it is?
On Stranger Tides.
Correct.
Ooh.
Number 6 is Avengers: Age of Ultron. Number 7 is Avengers: Endgame.
Really? Age of Ultron was more expensive than Endgame?
Yes, Age of Ultron was $365 million and Endgame was $356 million.
Well, good for Endgame because it made close to like $2 billion. So
Yeah, it was awesome.
yes.
Number 8 is Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness.
Really? Mm-hmm. Okay, so we're at 3 for Marvel, and I guessed 4. Mm-hmm. Surely Infinity War's got to be on this list.
Number 9 is Avatar: The Way of Water.
Okay.
Number 10 is Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny.
That's one that I still haven't watched that I'd like to watch.
Yes.
Just because I've seen the other ones, and James Mangold directed it, I'm pretty sure. And
I have no idea.
I like his work. So, anyways.
Number 11 would make you correct. It's Avengers: Infinity War.
Yes.
And then actually Pirates of the Caribbean at World's End is tied, 3-way tie, for 12th place.
With?
Justice League
Boo.
and Star Wars: The Last Jedi.
Boo. No, I don't know. Like, I'm not going to get off on a tangent here, but I have to address Justice League because I am a major comic book nerd and I love DC. I really do. Justice League Unlimited and Justice League, the animated series, both cartoons were phenomenal. And unfortunately, DC did not do themselves any favors when they were making this movie by hiring Zack Snyder as well as their front office, having very many conflicting visions. And it's a whole like can of worms that we could go into quite a bit, and I'm not going to. Mm-hmm. But that movie makes me sad, and that's all I'm going to say.
Yeah. I was scrolling down a little bit, and Tangled is actually the 21st most expensive. Isn't that crazy?
That is crazy. That's a great movie, though.
It is a great movie. Okay. Anyways, back on track. So I'll continue my fun facts here, unless you had anything else to add.
No, I did not.
Okay. I didn't have a ton, so this won't take super long. But my next fun fact is that the green flash that's referenced in the movie is
Yes.
a real thing. It is very rare, but it does happen at either sunrise or sunset, and it's best seen out at sea. It's caused by the refraction of light in the atmosphere.
That was going to be my guess. I mean, it makes sense, especially when you think about like the Northern Lights and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. But yeah, that's cool.
My next fact is that a real life council of pirates actually did exist at one time in the 17th and 18th century. It had pirates from the Atlantic Ocean, Caribbean Sea, and the Gulf of Mexico, and they had bases in Tortuga off of the coast of Haiti and in Jamaica, which I thought was interesting.
That's
just to think about, like pirates actually meeting and,
right.
Yeah, I just thought it was cool.
Right. That is super cool. Was Keith Richards their bookkeeper?
Yeah,
too?
Actually, yes, he was.
Wow, that's crazy.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, I mean, no wonder he looks like a bag of dust now. No, I'm
Totally
just kidding.
So my next fact is that the scene where the monkey, it's like toward the beginning, he's like shivering.
Yes.
Because like the whole, like everybody's freezing. You know what I'm talking about?
Are you talking about when they're in Singapore? Oh, no. I know what you're talking about. It's when they were on the boat after Singapore and they were trying to get to Davy Jones' locker so they could rescue Jack.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that was accomplished obviously partially by special effects, but also they trained the monkey to like have his arms crossed over himself so he looked cold.
That's awesome.
But the effects were that the special effects people made like a small wooden barrel that had a vibrating plate on top of it. So it made like the monkey was trained to sit on top of that plate so it would vibrate to make him look like he's shivering, but he knew to
cross
huddle
his
up.
arms.
Yeah.
That is so cool.
Isn't that cool?
Being somebody who's able to like train animals would be such a cool job. Like, that's awesome.
Yeah. My next one is just that the waterfall scene was filmed at Niagara Falls,
Nice.
which I thought was cool.
That is. I have that it's listed in my shooting locations.
Oh, sorry. I stole your thunder.
No, you're fine.
Next, some scenes of this movie were filmed during the production of Dead Man's Chest, just so that way the crew wouldn't have to revisit the same locations over again, which I thought was interesting. I don't know if I've heard of, filming two different movies at the same time. I thought that was cool.
Yeah, it happens.
I feel like it would be really confusing.
I would think so too.
I'm sure they have people that their jobs are to figure that out, obviously. But
yes, another pair of movies that has done that more recently was Infinity War and Endgame. They were filmed back to back and simultaneously.
That's awesome.
Yes.
All right, next. So this is the first Pirates of the Caribbean movie that Captain Barbossa's first name, Hector, is said. And the writers actually did not initially plan on giving the character a first name at all. But in the commentary for Pirates of the Caribbean, The Curse of the Black Pearl, Johnny Depp just like jokingly said that Barbossa's name was Hector. And this, like his comment was misinterpreted by people who watched it. And they thought, oh, like his name is actually Hector. And so that kind of left the writers feeling like, okay, well, we have to make his name Hector now.
That's crazy. That is a really wild origin story for a character's name. That is very cool, though.
Yeah.
I really like that. And I never, ever would have guessed that this was the first movie that they say Hector in. I guess probably because I've seen all of the movies and just knew him as Hector Barbossa.
Yeah.
I mean,
Hector
I guess...
is not really a pirate name.
Nah, but I mean, it also doesn't feel like terribly out of place.
Yeah.
Either, it's not like, I'm trying to think of it's not like Bruce,
Yeah. And my last fact, I mean, we've mentioned this probably in both of our other Pirates episodes, but as most people know, the Pirates movies were actually based on the Pirates of the Caribbean ride at Disney World, Disneyland, which I highly recommend both of those, by the way, Disneyland and Disney World, they're both great.
I can only
Disneyland is
vouch for Disney World.
yeah. Disneyland honestly is a little bit better. It's
That's
just a
what I've
longer
been
one and
told.
it's bigger and it's cool. But anyways, so just keeping that in mind, in the scene where the crew is like rocking the boat.
Yes,
And
where
they
they're trying
ended
to
up,
flip it upside
yes,
down.
and they flip
Yeah.
it upside down, and the screen goes black, and then you just hear like spooky music and voices. Those are directly from the Disneyland ride. It's like the audio from that.
That's cool.
And the most, notable thing is the voice that says, "Dead men tell no tales." And it's just, like, whenever I hear that, because I rode the ride multiple times before I actually watched the movies.
Yes.
So it was really cool when I watched this movie for the first time and like I was able to kind of call that back because it's like it's so nostalgic because me and my dad and my sister like loved riding that ride every time we went to Disney. So it was cool to hear.
Yes, I agree. I guess I did know the Dead Men Tell No Tale that was from the ride. I didn't realize the other audio was though, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. So that is all of the facts that I have.
Okay, cool. Well, I do not have a ton of production details, but I do have some. So as you kind of mentioned earlier, filming occurred at World's End while they were also filming Dead Man's Chest. So I do not actually have a date for when principal photography started. It is unspecific for that reason. But I can tell you that the movie was filmed in both 2005 and 2006. And as you mentioned, some scenes were shot during the filming of Dead Man's Chest for At World's End. Shooting locations included Utah, California, Hawaii, Niagara Falls, and the Caribbean.
I did see the Utah location. Did they film like the parts where Jack is like stuck in Davy Jones' locker at Utah? Because I feel like I remember seeing that somewhere, like where like the whole ground is like white because of the salt or something.
Yes. So that was at the Bonneville Salt Flats.
Yes, Salt Flats. That's what I was thinking of.
Yes. So that was in Utah, and that was 70 days of shooting.
Wow.
Yep. But they did all of it. And that was, I can tell you, in 2005.
Very nice.
Yes. And that they shot that in a monochromatic way, which if you watch it, everything seems almost exclusively white with the exception of like the characters' clothes and whatnot. That was intentional because they wanted it to feel like distinctly different than the real world, so to speak, that the pirates live in, which is typically very colorful. You know, you have lots of blues and greens and all those other colors. So, anyways, we have the very, very beginning of the movie. They were in Singapore. If you recall, they were trying to find Will. So all of the Singapore sequences were shot on a set that was built on Stage 12 at the Universal Studios backlot, which is very interesting because this is a Disney film.
Yeah, that is interesting.
Yeah, so I don't know any context or story. I couldn't find anything why that was the case, but it was shot at Universal Studios. At least those sequences were. And in order to shoot them, they built a set that was 80 feet by 130 feet, and it was a tank. So if you recall, they have, like, I guess you could call it the main level where, like, the majority of the characters are. That's, like, where Elizabeth Swan is and Captain Barbossa and Will and the Singapore pirates. They're all up there, but then underneath, you have some of the other pirates that are there as backup, and they're, like, standing in water. So that set was actually built as like a huge tank the whole thing was a tank, and it held, I don't know how many gallons, but it was 3.5 or 3.5 feet of water for that entire area. So, I mean, we could probably do the math, but I'm not going to.
Yeah.
So, anyways, that was the lowest level, was 3.5 feet deep of water.
Gotcha.
Also, director Gore Verbinski wanted the Singapore set to have a natural feel, so he had fungi grow on the set.
Huh.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of neither here nor there for me. It's interesting, but maybe a little gross.
Yeah.
But also, like, it's a set, so who cares? It's not like you're eating off of the set.
Right.
I don't know. It's interesting.
Well, does it mean like mushrooms?
I don't know. Not all fungi are mushrooms.
Yeah, I was just gonna say I didn't really notice any mushrooms in those scenes, but I mean,
go back
I wasn't
and look.
looking super closely for them. So.
True. Yes. And Verbinski also wanted the set to feel authentic, so all of the floorboards that the characters are standing on are actually hand cut.
Oh wow.
Which is how they would have been back in that era of history. They would not have had power tools. So it's very interesting to think, I don't know how many workers that would have required or how many hours it would have entailed, but it sounds painful. I enjoy woodworking in my free time, and I have lots of power tools, and even that can be exhausting at times. So pretty cool. Cool that they did that.
Yeah.
And last but not least, the climactic final battle, where everybody's, you have like, I guess, I don't even know what I would call it. It's not really a hurricane, but it's
A whirlpool.
Yeah, that's a great word. It's a whirlpool. Thank you. So there's like the whirlpool of where the ships are fighting and everything. That whole final battle was shot in a former air hangar in California. And they filled the whole thing with water, and they had like sets in there and everything. I don't know if they had like parts of ships or not, but in order to keep bacteria from growing, they kept the water at freezing temperatures.
Oh.
Yes. So because of this, the cast had to wear wetsuits underneath their wardrobe to prevent hypothermia.
Wow.
Yeah. So I can't imagine that that would have been very much fun to shoot. And it's also like, I never knew that, nor would I ever have guessed that. So I'd really like to go back and watch and see if like, anybody's lips are purple or, anything like that. It's very interesting to find out.
Yeah. There's no one that like goes in the water, right?
I don't think so.
Okay. I was just trying to think back if like anybody fell overboard or anything, like background characters or something. I was just curious. I couldn't remember.
Not to my knowledge.
Okay.
But that doesn't mean it didn't happen.
Right.
So that's everything that I had.
Okay.
All right. Well, I'm going to put the ball in your court. This is our third pirate movie. How would you rate it on a scale of 1 to 100?
Well, I wanted to make sure that I did this right because I know that I don't like this movie as much as the first Pirates movie.
Yep.
But I do like it better than the second Pirates movie. So I wanted to make sure I rated it correctly. So I went back and tried to find in our previous podcast what I rated it because I'm so bad at remembering.
Yeah.
So I gave myself the smallest amount of wiggle room back then because I gave the second one an 87 when we reviewed it and the first one an 89. So I'm going to give this one an 88 since it does fall in the middle of those for me. And I feel like I feel happy with that score. Like I do really like this movie. But yeah, I mean there's not much else to say, but I'm just so thankful that I gave myself some
wiggle room.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did not go back and look at my former scores.
I can't remember what you said for the first one or the second one, but I do know that you gave it an 89 as well for the first one.
For the first one, it was an 89. Huh. Okay. Well, I'm going to take a shot in the dark here, and this is a number I had picked before you told me any of this information. I'm going to give it an 87.
All right.
If I'm conflicting with a previous score because I would rank this higher than At World's End, then I'm sorry. But that's what I'm feeling right now in this moment. And I would agree. It's a very good movie. It's very enjoyable. There are a couple parts that take me out of it. I think more than anything, it's probably the final battle where Calypso turns into a giant.
Yeah, I agree.
That's honestly my biggest gripe.
Yeah, same.
Everything other than that is pretty solid. It just is one of those moments where I'm like, okay, this feels unnecessary. I don't know. And I don't even have a problem with Calypso being a part of it. I think her story with Davy Jones is very compelling, and it's a good story device.
Yeah, I agree.
Especially with how closely this movie is related to Dead Man's Chest. I think it's great. And I also love that they have their whole love story thing, because without her being a part of the movie and being a love interest for Davy Jones and kind of his origin story, we wouldn't have some of the great, great, great music that Hans Zimmer produced for this film.
Yes.
So I really don't have a problem with her as a character. It's more so just, why did she become 25 feet tall at the end of the movie? Yeah, it's only for a couple minutes and you forget about it because there's a huge battle quickly afterwards. But I don't know. It's just, it doesn't really matter, but it's also, I think I'd probably score the movie a little bit higher if it wasn't in there.
Yeah.
Because literally every time I watch this, I laugh out loud when it happens. It's just okay.
Yeah.
But anyways.
No, I agree with everything you said. I think I'd probably have scored it higher too, had that not been in there. Are you ready to move on to favorite scenes?
Sure. I kind of wanted to pose a question.
Okay.
Maybe. I don't know. How do you feel about this movie specifically being an end of an era? Not for the film as a whole or in the real world, but in the movie universe. Jack Sparrow's there's this through line story where he's really wrestling with the idea of the world is a smaller place now. And Cutler Beckett makes the comment that the immaterial has become immaterial. And he's referring to the idea that pirates kind of thrive off of myth and legend. And so this whole idea that Jack Sparrow could be in one part of the world and people tell a story about him, and by the time he gets to his destination, people have really blew up his story to be something completely not true, but he eats it up and that type of thing. That's kind of the whole pirate narrative, is the stories get bigger and whatever, the myth grows and whatnot. And so now the immaterial, i.e. the myth, is now immaterial, meaning that it's non-existent. It's gone now because Cutler Beckett and all his legions of ships and everything else, they're everywhere. The world has, quote unquote, become a smaller place, and the pirate's life of freedom and all of so on and so forth is kind of gone. And he actually kind of holds that over Jack a little bit when he's telling him, you could work for me and sail the seas forever. You in Jack's mind, he's thinking, or I could become the captain of the Flying Dutchman, and then I could live forever and sail the seas forever. And it's kind of this really, I guess, a really big through line for the film. What are your thoughts on that whole thing?
I don't know.
Okay.
I'm not, I have to be honest. Maybe this makes me dumb, but I'm just not a super deep thinker about those kinds of things. But I think everything you said is very interesting, and I like that you pointed it out. I don't know if it's just I have the shortest attention span ever or what, but like when I'm watching movies like this, a lot of like those things that you just said completely go over my head. And I just watch because of like, this sounds so ditzy of me, but I just watch it because of like, you know, I love the romance story between Davy Jones and Calypso, and you know, like that kind of thing. So I'm sorry, I have no answer for you. No, and it's also late and I'm tired, so that's partially why.
Well,
but
no, that's okay, and you're fine. And I don't think I could blame you or anybody else for not picking up on that. Like, it is a major through line in this film, and they talk about it quite a bit, but there's a lot going on in this movie. And I feel like that through line, that plot device, whatever, is so strong that it could almost be its own movie. And I'm definitely not criticizing for them choosing for it to not be the main plot point, but it's like, I feel like it's really strong because it happened in real life. I mean, truly, it did. There was an end of an era for pirates. That's why we don't see these massive ships. There's still pirates out there today, but it is not the same. Not like this was, where you're going to uncharted islands and you have, you know, like meetings of the pirates and that whole thing. Like, it's different. It's very much similar to like the West. You had the Wild West and cowboys and everything and gunslingers, and then that kind of came to an end when the railroad showed up. And that's what happened here. The I don't know if you would call it that, like the ship production caught up with where the pirates were at or what, but the world got smaller in their world, in their words. So anyways, but yeah, we can move on to favorite scenes or likes, dislikes. What would you say yours are for either category?
I want to start with the opening scene. It's like iconic, I think, and at the same time, like it's chilling and captivating, all in the same, you know.
Yes.
Just especially when all of the prisoners start singing, and I don't know, it's just like, it's a very strong start, I think.
I think that's one of the best scenes in the entire film, maybe in the entire trilogy. Like, legitimately, that song is so chilling, like you said, and well written, and it's striking. Like, that is like a cinematic moment. In fun fact, Gore Verbinski actually helped Hans Zimmer with this song. He co-wrote it.
I did read about that, yeah.
Which is pretty cool. But especially because I think it's so wild and maybe poignant. I don't know. I guess it depends on how you resonate with the film. That a child is the one who starts singing. Which,
that makes it even more so, like, just...
Yeah, and that he gets hung.
Yeah.
Like, he dies. I don't know. It's wild, and it is so cool to see like the whole group come together and start singing and everything, and then like it's over. The executioner, you know, he pulls the lever, they all get hung, and that's that. And then moving on.
Yeah.
It's pretty wild.
And now that song, I mean, it is and has been like this huge trend on like TikTok, like it's everywhere. And anytime I'm like on social media and I come to a video with that song, I like can't not watch it because it's like people put that song in the background of like really like crazy videos about like the ocean. And I've also seen a few of, like we were talking about earlier, like modern day pirates, which is so just interesting to me, and crazy. But it's a captivating song. It's one of those that when you hear it, like you're not going to turn it off. Yeah. Especially because it's not that long either. But it's like, there's just not music like that today. You know, it's like I guess I don't know what you'd call it. It's not like a sea shanty or anything, but it's like an anthem almost, but I don't know.
chilling is probably the best word, like you said.
Another scene that I like is, this one's more of a lighthearted one, but when Jack first realizes that they need to tip the boat over, and he's
Yes.
like pretending like, oh, what's that over there? And like runs
Yes.
back and forth. And I don't know. I like that scene. And then like, it's fun as the viewer of the movie to kind of put together like, oh, like this is what they're doing, you know?
Yeah.
And yeah, it's just cool to see that all play out. Like once they have it flipped over, like for a little bit, you're like, okay.
Right.
Because they're just kind of hanging out upside down.
Yeah.
Except for the two who, what are their names, that tied themselves up, right?
Yes, the comedy relief duo.
Yeah.
I can't think of their names.
The guy with the glass eye and then the
short guy.
yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I like that scene. I think it's fun.
Yes, I agree. One of the scenes that I like is maybe a little bit further into the film is when Cutler Beckett first shows up on the Flying Dutchman, and Davy Jones comes out, you know, and he's all upset because he's the captain of the ship and everything. But Cutler Beckett actually is kind of the captain because he can kill Davy Jones because he has the heart and the dead man's chest and everything. So anyways, I think it's just really interesting seeing that, like, the tension between Beckett and Davy Jones. I love that. I think Bill Nye, whatever, plays Davy Jones phenomenally. He's still, in my opinion, one of the best villains in cinema history. He's fantastic. He's right up there with Darth Vader and Thanos. Like, he's top notch. But regardless, like, the dynamic between him and Beckett is spot on. Beckett, it's very reserved and regal and political, you know, all this stuff, but also, like, he never forfeits any control during any of their interactions. He's very confident in the power that he has. And I think it would have been interesting to see the filmmakers maybe play on the tension a little bit more. Like somebody like Christopher Nolan, who's like a master of creating tension. It would have been interesting to see how he would have played that up a little bit. But they also were working with a lot of different moving parts, so I don't blame them for that. But anyways, I did love seeing, like, this, I think it's a little bit further than the scene I was just talking about, but later in the movie, Davy Jones goes into, I believe, his quarters, and he's real upset because of Beckett and everything else that's going on. I think it was Davy Jones. Maybe it was somebody else, but I'm pretty sure it was Davy Jones. And he goes in there, and like a bunch of British soldiers are in there, and they like turn a cannon towards the dead man's chest and are basically like, everybody has their guns pointed at him. Like, just that whole thing that they're there on the ship with him pointing guns at his heart.
Yeah.
Like, hey, if you step out of line, you're dead.
Right.
That was just a really interesting and cool thing to see. And I thought it was pretty neat.
Yeah, I agree. Another scene I like, speaking of Davy Jones, is when Calypso is like put in the
brig.
Yeah, that's the word. And Davy Jones comes down and like, is that their first like on-screen interaction? Like,
yes.
Okay, that's what I thought. I love that. And just like that she
turns him back to a man.
Yes, that's exactly what I was just about to say. It's really intriguing, and I just love the tension that's portrayed there. They, like, both actors did a really good job. And yeah, I just think that's a cool scene too.
Yeah, I agree. I do think it's interesting to watch that whole dynamic play out because, like, there's so much like bitterness and anger and heartache and sadness. Like, there's a lot of emotion in that scene, from both of them.
Right.
And it's really interesting, I guess, to see as like their conversation kind of progresses, just how hardened Davy Jones is towards Calypso because he wounded, or she wounded him so deeply. As they talk more, like, he almost starts to make less sense. And I think that just points to how bitter he is towards her, that he's like, she's like, why, and she keeps asking questions, and he just like kind of gets aggressive and is like, like, no, I will never love you, whatever. Right. And even though like he came to her and was having like this really sweet, intimate moment with her just a couple minutes ago, like he didn't have to go over there to talk to her. And that she even says that, she's like, why did you come here? Yeah. And then he leaves. Yeah. And I don't know, maybe that's like a deeper philosophical thing that the writers put in there about like how love can be an enigma sometimes, and the different emotions that you feel. Or maybe I'm just filling in the gaps for him, but
yeah, well, I think you're a lot more, I think you think a lot deeper about those things than I do. You're probably picking up on some things that I didn't.
Maybe. I could just be, there's an old saying for like, I think it originated with people who were authors that wrote like fiction and stuff, but it was talking about like lore, like how do you develop lore for your universe and stuff. And kind of the consensus was like, you don't have to work that hard. You lay out some things and then your fans will fill in the gaps for you. And I don't know if maybe that's what I'm doing here, but it does, either way, it doesn't really matter. But anyways.
Well, on that same note about Davy Jones and Calypso, they have like the, what is it? Like a locket that plays the music.
Yes.
When did we watch this movie last week?
Yeah.
Yeah. Immediately after we watched it, I was like, I'm going to learn how to play that song on piano. And so I printed off the music, and I mean, I haven't worked on it since then, but it was fun to start learning.
I will say one of the coolest videos I've ever seen was a guy who he had access to like a legit church organ. I'm not talking just like I think I've seen this. I'm talking like a massive like grand organ or whatever the right name is, and he played Davy Jones' theme on it. It is insane. It always puts a smile on my face. It's one of the coolest videos ever. If you haven't watched it, go check it out.
Yeah, it is awesome. All right, my last scene that I wanted to touch on was just the final fight scene as a whole. There's so much happening, but it flows together really well. Like, kind of like we were talking about earlier, like there's a lot of chaos. There's the whirlpool. There's obviously the fight that's happening. Then the fact that Elizabeth and Will decide to get married, and Barbossa officiates, and then Will's death. Like, it is crazy.
Yeah, it is loaded. It really is. I mean, they're not holding or not pulling out any stops, not holding back any punches. I don't know what I'm trying to say, but you get what I'm saying.
Yeah. So, you described it well. It is loaded, and it's just a lot of fun to watch, and it's like a whirlwind. And I do hate though that Will does die, and that like I'm so glad that he comes back, but the fact that he's now like taking Davy Jones' place, and he can only be on land every 10 years, every 10 years. Yeah. Yep. Like, I hate that, but
it's heartbreaking, but also like, I understand why the writers did it. They had to have a resolution for Davy Jones, and they made it very clear, like the captain or the Flying Dutchman has to have a captain. Right. Yeah. So if he's going to die, it's got to be somebody, and it probably is going to be either Jack or Will. And I guess I would say I'm glad with how it turned out. Like you said, I don't love that he can only be on land every 10 years, and that's, I guess, a testament to a well-written and complex love story between him and Elizabeth Swann, because I don't want that for them. But he made a promise to his dad, and that he was going to save him. He was going to free him from Davy Jones, and he kept his word. He held up his end of the bargain, and he did free him. But, it came at a major cost.
Yeah. I do love the resolution with him and his dad at the end after he's captain, though. I think that's a really sweet scene.
Yes, it is. That scene, well, I guess right before that, the scene where Will dies and then Jack kills Davy Jones. The scene where the entire crew just slowly starts surrounding Will.
Yeah.
And they're all saying part of the crew, part of the ship. That scene is like, I wouldn't say intense, but like it's fascinating, maybe is the right word, or gripping.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. Like, it's a really good scene. I love that they're all saying part of the crew, part of the ship, and then they surround him, and then, you know, they cut out his heart.
Yeah.
Like, that whole thing is wild and really well done, and I like that scene in particular. I'm glad it was included.
Yeah. I think that's all of the scenes that I had that I wanted to talk about.
Okay. I don't know that I have a whole lot of other ones that I want to touch on. I guess I'll make mention of Davy Jones' locker when they're there and, you know, they have to go get Jack out. I think that whole thing was just weird. And it was intended to be that way.
Yeah, it definitely
very
was.
obviously. But I don't know. That's like almost a head scratcher. And that's, I'm sure, what they were shooting for, that it's a form of torment. You know, that's the whole point for Jack, that like he's kind of reliving the same thing over and over again. Nothing makes sense, and
Right.
perpetual torment, so on and so forth. I get it, but also like the whole thing is odd. Like, there's 20 Jacks and Jack is shooting another Jack because someone tried to eat his peanut, you know.
Yeah.
That whole thing. I don't know. It's just interesting. I'm not like talking about it in a negative light. I'm just making note
It's just
of it
different.
because it was a major plot point, and it's interesting. I will say, though, one of my favorite scenes is when they all go to Tortuga, and Elizabeth Swann is now a pirate lord, and interestingly, she becomes a pirate lord because I can't remember his name now. I want to say it's like Sing Fei or something like that, but I'm almost positive that's wrong, and I'm sorry. But he dies, and he names her captain.
Because he thinks she's Calypso.
Right, because he thinks that she's Calypso. But then they go there, and then Jack votes for her to be the pirate king, because he knew that nobody else would vote for anybody other than themselves.
Right.
Which was very cool. I like the whole atmosphere of Tortuga, I just like that they go there, that there's like a pirate meeting. That whole thing is funny and interesting. I love that Keith Richards is in the movie, because if you recall, I think we talked about it in our first Pirates of the Caribbean episode, but
Yeah.
Jack Sparrow was based off of Keith Richards. So I like that he's in there. I like that he's Jack Sparrow's dad. I think that's cool. I think he himself is like a very visually interesting looking pirate.
Yeah.
Like he almost kind of looks like Captain Hook, just with like all the
He
red
does,
and
yes.
everything. But he's very cool. I love that he's like the bookkeeper. I don't know. Like he protects the rules, the pirate rules. And he's playing guitar in that sequence when they're all having a debate. That's cool too, because Keith was actually playing on set. But yeah, the whole Tortuga sequence is probably one of the only other scenes I want to make note of, because that whole thing was cool.
Yeah.
I think that's all I've got.
Okay.
All right. Well, that was our first trilogy down. Pirates, I think we can confidently say, at least for the time being, we're done with those movies.
Yes.
So it's been a fun ride. I've enjoyed talking about them. And thank you guys for joining us. Again, if this was your first episode, thank you for listening. We enjoyed having you here, and we hope you come back next week, where we are going to be having a guest in the studio. Our first guest of season 3. He's a familiar one. One of our favorites. Jordan Bewley is going to be here with us talking about Memento.
Yes.
If you've never seen Memento, it is not Christopher Nolan's first movie, but one of his first movies. It is very, very good, and I'm going to let you know in just a second if it's streaming anywhere.
Yeah. Well, I was just going to chime in and say, I mean, Christopher Nolan movies, I don't know that I've seen a bad one. So this one we watched for the very first time a while back, and it is like, it's definitely one where you kind of have to think, but it's really good.
It's very solid. I did check. It's streaming on Peacock currently and also Amazon Prime. But yes, it is kind of a head scratcher, but also like it's just really well done. And as far as Christopher Nolan movies go, it was really refreshing because it's kind of smaller. But anyways, we're going to talk about that next week. So please come back. We're excited to have Jordan back in the studio, and we hope you'll join us.
Yes, we will see you next time.
All right. Bye, guys.